Hello, everyone, and welcome to NorthStar community. It's so great to be here, and appreciate you joining in. As you know, for you that are new, of course, we do these weekly, and they're about our journey to recovery from addiction, addictive thinking, toxic shame, you name it. And we categorize our addictions into substances, compulsive behaviors, and people. And the people one again can be one of the more confusing parts of this, but it's just that we get ourselves into toxic relationships because of our own brokenness, unhealthiness, and then we're attracted to other people who are broken and unhealthy. And for me, we get into some pretty serious relationships with people in what we call trauma bonding, where we've all been traumatized, we've all had abandonment issues, and we go out and find other people who have abandonment issues and trauma. And next thing you know, you're in this dance of never really having a fulfilling relationship because it's uncomfortable to be safe with someone because of our survival instincts, because of all we've been through as children. So anyway, so people's probably addiction to other people's probably the biggest thing. And again, with that, it's hard to explain sometimes this part of it if you haven't, been involved in support groups or read books on it. But we we become very controlling, and in many ways, in passive ways. We don't look like we're controlling, but we really are. We're giving ourselves up. We agree too much. We don't disagree enough. We fear that because of our lack of value, that we aren't valuable enough to have our own thoughts, our own feelings, and thus things like self-actualization, where we say, I am me, I have my dreams, I have my hopes, I have my interests, you are you, you have your dreams, you have your hopes, you have your blah, blah, blah. When we get addicted to people, we have a hard time with that because we want to control the situation and think that if we do all the right things, people will love us and care for us and all that. So as you can hear, it's very destructive. And worse, a lot of us do it. So, our lack of value really gets in the way. But I wanted to talk today about relapse, and we don't talk about this often, but I think it's important because I really believe relapse is part of recovery. I just don't know of anyone who hasn't relapsed at some point. I think I've talked about this before, but someone one time asking, well, now the people that come to NorthStar, how many of those have relapsed? And of course, they were thinking substances, because remember, substances, compulsive behaviors, people, right? And so I loved what one person said, well, for us that are substance abusers, relapse is much more immediate and catastrophic. For us that are compulsive behavior and people addicts, it can be catastrophic, but oftentimes it's not, but it's more immediate and happens a lot. It goes on, and we get better, and then we relapse. But there isn't this huge jail sentence, or there's not this death, or there's not this very serious health condition due to it. But addiction is addiction, and recovery is recovery. And so the thing that we talk about all the time in here, just keep in mind, is that what is addiction? Addiction is habitual behavior to avoid pain. And a couple of things, artifacts to explain that better is the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey has 10 questions on it, ranges from abuse to neglect to trauma, basically, as what you experienced as a child. And about, I think, 13% score 0 on it. But a lot of the population scores less than 3 on it. But about 15% of the population also scores 6 or above on the ACE. Well, NorthStar, I would guess that we're about 85% of people who scored 6 or more on the ACE. And that's great, because that's why they're there, because trauma and abandonment create so much pain and so much addictive behaviors because of the stuff we had to face as children, and the messages of not being loved, of not being okay, of being defective and wrong, and all those things go on, and they create so many false narratives that really make addiction attractive to us. But if you find yourself drinking a lot if you have memories of you drinking as a kid and you suddenly were more likable you had more friends, blah, blah, blah. That's a pretty good sign that you were not happy with you. And we all don't, we all have our parts about having inadequacies and stuff, but for some of us, we have lots and lots of trauma in our lives. And trauma tells us to survive. We talk about rich, full, meaningful life a lot. That's not something that's happening when you're when you're surviving and being addictive. And what you're doing is you're creating more and more issues for yourself and others. So the good news is recovery. We can get rid of all that. We can take all the trauma in our lives, all the abandonment, and turn it into something good. We can turn it into a gift that makes us better people. And I know people a lot of times don't like to hear this, but it's true. Again, with trauma, with abandonment, with any of the bad experiences in our life, we have two choices. We can make ourselves bitter, resentful, and let it destroy us, fill us with anger and resentment, and live addictively to get through the day. Or we can talk about our trauma and our abandonment at a pace that we can handle, and eventually we can then assign something good to the pain, and because it makes us better people. So that's our choices. So I'm going to read Romans 9 to us as we talk about relapse. Again, I think all of us do, but I want you to hear this. If you kind of read into this a little bit, it's a little long. This is Paul writing, but I want you to hear about the people that get it are the ones that don't think they got it. Does that make sense? And so when we go in relapse, we really judge ourselves harshly. And today, I think my goal is if you can leave here saying, yeah, we don't want to relapse, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. You're not bad. It's part of it. And you just got to pick yourself up and keep going. Who in this world do you think you are to second guess God? Do you for one moment suppose any of us knows enough to call God into question? Clay doesn't talk back to the fingers that mold it, saying, why did you shape me like this? Isn't it obvious that a potter has a perfect right to shape one lump of clay into a vase for holding flowers and another into a pot for cooking beans? If God needs one style of pottery specially designed to show his angry displeasure and another style carefully crafted to show his glorious goodness, isn't that all right? Either or both happens to us, but it also happens to other people. Hosea put it well. I'll call nobodies and make them somebodies. That's us, right? And in this context, he was talking about Gentiles, Jews who were being called, who were probably on the lower spectrum of society, and they were turning to Christianity. I'll call the unloved and make them beloved. In a place where they yelled, you're nobody, they're calling you God's living children. And you think about it with recovery, it's so hard for us to recover, when things aren't so bad. I mean, I know it's crazy, but pain really is what gets us moving. So Isaiah maintained the same emphasis. In each grain of sand on the seashore each grain of sand on the shore were numbered, and the sum labeled chosen of God, they'd be numbers still, not names. So we're all important, we're all individual. God is in our lives. Salvation comes by personal selection. God doesn't count us, he calls us by name. Arithmetic is not his focus. Isaiah had looked ahead and spoken the truth. If our powerful God had not provided us a legacy of living children, we would have ended up like the ghost towns like Sodom and Gomorrah. Let me go a little further here. Sorry, it's a lot of reading here, but it's such great scripture here. How can we sum it up? All those people who didn't seem interested in what God was doing actually embraced what God was doing as he straightened out their lives. We can relate to that, right, in recovery. Think about when we were in our depths of our addiction. We may have cared about God, and we probably did, but we felt really awful, lots and lots of shame, and we certainly didn't feel like we were worthy to be embraced, right? And Israel, who seemed so interested in reading and talking about what God was doing, missed it. How could they miss it? Because instead of trusting God, they took over. Oh, that is us, huh? In addiction, we take over everything and mess everything up. They're absorbed in what they themselves were doing. They were so absorbed in their God projects that they didn't notice God right in front of them, like a huge rock in the middle of the road. And so they stumbled into him and went sprawling. Now, this is where I love, this is the analogy to me for relapse, is that We went sprawling. We got full of ourselves. We thought we could do this on our own. We didn't need anybody. We didn't need to go to support groups. We didn't need to stop, or we could just a little bit. We'd be okay. We could a little bit of porn, not gonna hurt us. We can drink a little bit, won't hurt us, and then next thing you know, we're spinning again, right? So Isaiah gives us the metaphor for pulling this together. This is God speaking. Careful, I put a huge stone on the road to Mount Zion, a stone that you can't get around. That would be our addictions. But the stone is me. If you're looking for me, you'll find me on the way, not in the way. So God throws out these things to stop us, to keep us from destroying ourselves. And think about it. What is it? Why do we relapse? What causes it? Why can't we just stop? Why do we have to fight this? Some of you in your journey of recovery, every day is a struggle not to be addictive. Others of you have gotten through it and feeling pretty good and moving on. But the fact is, we need recovery. We need recovery. Need recovery. So toxic shame, never enough, mediocrity at best, and lots of inner critic talking about how bad we are. We really don't know anything else but addictive behavior. We've been in it so long, and probably our family was in it for so long. Of course, we've talked all the time. Trauma and abandonment, childhood neglect create lots and lots of our addictive behaviors. And then things like well-meaning families that enable us, help us keep staying there or relapsing. So when we think about it, though, relapse is so just part of it, I think. And we have to, I love the mailing the letter analogy that Dr. Tversky in his book Addictive Thinking uses, and I think it's so important here. So all of you here listening to this, you've relapsed at some point, or you will. I mean, I hope you don't, but it probably will happen. But if you do, don't panic. Don't judge yourself. Your toxic shame will jump in and try to do that. But instead, you have to remember the mailing the letter analogy. So Dr. Tversky is telling a story about he's got to mail this letter today. It has to go out. He looks out the window. It's now been snowing for several hours. There's rain before it, so there's ice on the sidewalks and the roads. So he goes out to start his car, won't start. The post office is 4 blocks away. So he goes, all right, I'm going to have to mail this thing. So he does all the winter clothing to get himself going. And about the second block, he hits a sheet of ice hidden by snow, wipes out, hurts really bad, doesn't injure him, but it's hurt, it hurts. And of course, we all do when we fall, we always look around to see who saw us. And then we go, oh, that hurt. Right, so we know. He fell, didn't injure anything, didn't break anything, didn't sprain anything, but it hurt. Just like when we relapse, it hurts. So he's at block 2. So his choice is, does he stumble back home in pain and misery and not mail a letter, or does he get up and work his way to the post office in pain, but doing the right things and mail the letter? Of course, he goes to the post office. But the analogy is that if you relapse, you've been in group, you've been in therapy, you've been talking to other people, people to call, you have sponsors. Don't go back home. Get yourself up. You don't have to start over. You know where you are. You know what you need to do, and move forward. It's a great analogy for us in relapse. So you don't have these feelings of despair. Oh my gosh, I've failed. I can't do this. It's terrible. It's awful. I'm a terrible person. Well, you can do all that, but you also know, you know what? I need to get back to group, or I need to get to an AA meeting, or I need to go to NorthStar, or I need to call somebody, or I know these 3 people we've talked before, they understand. I'm going to call them. I'm going to get myself back up, get back in the game, and keep going. Because we know that when we relapse, a lot of times what we do is we isolate first. So we're going to quit isolating. We're going to get out there and start seeing people again. And we just have to keep remembering, everybody relapses. You're not so bad. You're not perfect, but you're a good and decent person. And that's your goal. And you have to also remember that pain is the great teacher. It's a class that none of us want to go to, but we really need to. I love this Lindsey Vonn. Now she's a Olympic champion, and I know she's talking about physical pain, but it fits here. So she had 9 major injuries, 5 surgeries, right? She persevered to become one of the most decorated skiers in Olympic skiing history. So she's an icon, right? And her grandmother told her this one time. She goes, "You better make friends with pain because it's going to be around your whole life." That, oh my gosh, what a great quote for us. We know that the way for us to get healthy and to become unaddicted is pain. It's only when our pain is so high we have no other alternatives but to get clean is when we get clean. So pain is our friend, and that's hard to do. So but you got to remember that when you relapse, pain becomes your friend again. You feel ashamed, you feel sad, you feel hopeless, you feel exhausted. We could go on and on with things you feel, but the fact is, you're not alone. Lots of people relapse. You're going to relapse, and you've done it. Now get up, get going, and go mail that letter, right? And so, and I just wanted to mention anhedonia real quick because I wish people would talk about this more. But anhedonia is this feeling of dull, gray, drab. Your life just becomes, you know, it's certainly, a lot of people certainly diagnose this as depression. But I think it's a little different in the fact that you don't really feel much of anything. You feel numb. Well, it's your brain is recovering from your addictive behaviors. You've kind of let your brain stand off to the side, and you've let addiction take over for much of the performance, thinking, doing in your life. And so when you suddenly take that away, your brain's kind of like sitting there, idle, and it needs to get started again. So just remember, if you're feeling dull, gray, drab, you just feel like you have no excitement, you're not sad, but you're not glad, everything's just flatline, you probably have anhedonia. Now, the good part about anhedonia, it goes away. The bad part about anhedonia, it may last up to a year, so you got to get through it. But understand it. Become a clinician here and understand your brain is recovering physically, and anhedonia requires some time. And it doesn't mean you're depressed. It just means your brain's kind of starting to kickstart itself again. And both sides of your brain, the logic side of your brain and the emotional side of your brain, is starting to work together again because they haven't done that for a while. So don't worry about it, but do understand it because a lot of people have relapsed because of anhedonia. So anyway, good to know. And, toxic shame jumps in there and blah, blah, blah. We can say all the bad things we want to about ourselves. But so we know the one last thing that I'm going to talk about here real quickly is connection. Connection is the key to overcoming addiction. It's certainly the key to restarting, rebooting after you have relapsed. Because I can almost guarantee you that when you relapse, you were withdrawing from the right people. You were starting to isolate. You were starting to be your own worst critic. You had lots of debates within yourself, and you lost every time. So give yourself a break. Understand relapse happens, and get yourself back to other people, because the people in these support groups, AA, our NorthStar, everyone in there will understand. There's not one person that's going to judge you for what you did. So come and try to get it done. Remember, God loves you way more than anything you've done. His grace is fantastic and bigger than we can imagine. So I just wanted to talk about relapse just for one time here and there because I think it's important for us to remember so we're not so hard on ourselves. I hope none of you relapse, but I would guess most of you have. I'm hoping a lot of you are far enough down the road you won't need to relapse again, but it's so easy to do. Don't judge yourself for it. Just see it as part of the process of overcoming addiction. So thanks for joining me. We meet on Wednesdays and Fridays at 6:30 here at Walnut Grove Baptist Church in Mechanicsville. If you're not from this area, please email me at csimpson@wgva.church. Love to hear from you. And so let's close with the prayer of serenity. And again, thank you for joining. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace. Taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever and next. Amen. So when you've relapsed, there is a prayer out there that reminds us. The prayer of serenity reminds us of what we need to do. So thank you for joining today, and look forward to seeing you this week at some point. And again, if you're not local, please feel free to email me at csimpson@wgva.church. Thank you again.